Well, welcome back. Thanks for your patience in our half-time break. Went on a little bit longer. I don't know if there's additional time. I don't think we'll have time for penalties if it goes that long tonight, but we'll try and get a few questions in. We've got a stack of questions here, and there'll be a roving mic just in the last few minutes where if you haven't put your question to us already and you'd like to ask one of the panellists or any of the panel a question, then perhaps you can do so then. I'll kick off. Quite a serious topic, well, very serious topic to start with. Doesn't have a name, but the first question is to the panel. What do you think the Premier League should do this season about the ever-present racism issue in football? Chris, got a view to start with?
So if we're talking about, because what there has been and has been for quite some time is it's probably been a little bit more about the lack of black and ethnic coaches, at the highest level. But I think this question is about general...
From fans to the...
Yeah, I think racism in the game. So, firstly, I would have to say that the game is in a far better place than what it used to be. I think there is a genuine enthusiasm for that to change. But I think we are in an era now, we are in a time, and always have been, where there are going to be incidents that are going to happen in our game. One, of course, was very much highlighted at Fulham, I think, at the weekend. But I think we are in a far better place for it to be addressed now than what it used to be. Unfortunately, it's part of society, and for us to eliminate this is something that I think I don't see will happen. But I think what we also have at the moment is that we have far more individuals and clubs that are trying to deal with this. So some of that's down to, I think, social media. I think some of that's down to also, I think, a bigger responsibility and awareness, and something that I think has been pleasing to see is that the perpetrators not getting away with it. And if they're not getting away with it, it means that there's somebody that has seen an incident, somebody has seen somebody racially abusing somebody, verbally abusing somebody, and making the authorities aware of that, either through the club or through the stewards. And probably a few years ago, that's something that perhaps wouldn't have happened. I think it's a difficult enough job, I think, at times for stewards anyway, and sometimes that's something that they wouldn't make the clubs aware of or the authorities aware of. So I think that it has been clamped down. I think social media, I know I'm going on a little bit more about this subject, but when I was at Brighton as manager, when I was at Norwich as manager, on 3 occasions I was racially abused on Twitter. And on 2 of them occasions, one was a young lad of 16 years of age, one was another lad of 18 years of age. All happened straight after the game, obviously the emotion of a poor result and so. And on 2 of them occasions, I think the police had visited their house or around the house within a day. So I think it's something that now, I think, as the authorities, I think, are starting to get more of a grip on. But as eliminating it completely from our game, it's an impossibility. It's social highs and lows, country going through a more difficult time, immigration and so on. And sometimes this is how individuals will show their displeasure and through the things that they're more passionate about. But I do think that the game is trying harder than ever before to do the best that they can and eliminate it the best way that they can.
Henry, you've always been an early adopter in social media. Do you think it's up to the social media companies to do more?
Absolutely, they have to do more. I think the authorities, I know the question was about the Premier League and what Premier League clubs can do more, and I think they are they're responding. Obviously, Fulham, EFL club now, but they responded very quickly. They had a statement out. Chelsea reacted very strongly when there were incidents at the bridge last season. But I think we have a problem, and following England, covering England, the racist abuse that some of the players get is just at certain countries, and you always think the further east you get, the more that the players are going to be targeted. And we saw that last season, and I thought the encouraging element was we've got some very strong young players now who are standing up for this, like Raheem Sterling with his Instagram post. I know that was slightly Chelsea related, but he was calling out the media, saying, if you are depicting young black players in a certain way, there will then be, on match days in the febrile atmosphere, fans will respond. So, we've got a responsibility. And that Instagram post, I remember ringing up the office and I said, this is one of the most important social media messages that's ever been posted by a player. And he's called out our industry. And I know that every media organisation in this country had meetings about the ethnic diversity of the press box, and I think we're trying to make strides in that direction. But I think also, and I've talked to the players about this, and I've talked to Southgate about this. I've been covering this for so long, and I know it's completely against what sport is about and the players' natural instincts about. But I think the players are going to have to walk off. And I think in the international field, you see, particularly with England, you see some of the fines, the pathetic punishments that UEFA hand down. It's like sort of 6,000-7,000 euros. We're going to close a part of Montenegro's ground and put a little banner there. You're not going to fight racists with hashtags and banners. You're going to have to embarrass them. You're going to have to shame them. And I think it's now down to, because I don't think UEFA are going to do it. The FA have got their protocols, things like that. I think at some point the players will walk off, and that will then create such a debate. Maybe the people around the racists will call them out earlier, saying, listen, you're ruining it for us, because the fans have got to take responsibility as well as the media and the authorities. So I think it's a general thing, but you have to rewind the whole thing back, and it comes down to education in schools as well. That is the starting point. But I can see players walking off, and if players do walk off, I think they'll have certainly the support of the media, and I hope they have the support of the FA as well.
Ted, would you have walked off?
Yeah, I think so. I think football is a family, and I think if some of my teammates would have at the time felt very strongly about walking off to make a statement, then they would have been part of my family, and I think I would have done that with them, yeah, without a doubt, yeah, to make real statements, to make people understand what the issue is. I think it's more a social thing than a football thing. I think football has tried very, very hard over the years to try and kick racism out of football, but it is more of a social thing in England, really, rather than just alienating football about it.
Carrie, I know we were talking about this earlier. The question is, what can the Premier League do? But the fines that are handed out by federations are paltry, aren't they?
I just don't think for racism they're strong enough. You can have incidents of red cars or a fracas in a tunnel, and the fines will be far greater than 10,000 that Millwall just got from the FA for the scenes that we saw at the Everton FA Cup, which were primarily ugly. There's another thing I have a bit of an issue with. We've talked about Raheem Sterling's wanted to say that actually, in a sense, that if that club or fans in that club are going to be racist, then actually they need to get points docked. I think that would be unenforceable, because you could get fans going into other stands. I mean, if you absolutely find that there are racist fans in that stand, I do think England, and Gareth Southgate said this on the night in Montenegro, that we can't pretend that we're saints in this, and we're not. And I'm hearing week in, week out in championship games, and we saw it this weekend. When did the FA last enforce a stadium ban? But they're doing it all around Europe. And I think we've got to have a little bit of reality. If we want to stamp out that in England, we can't look to Europe, and we do. We look to the East, we look to Russia, and we look to Montenegro. When did we last seriously suggest, and it's a few voices in Russia and where they have been punished, when did we last suggest a stadium ban in England? And I think genuinely, if we are concerned and there is a rise, I don't think point deduction will be enforceable, but I do think the threat has to come. I think the threat has to come in society, particularly with the rise of the far right, and Seferin has said that in UEFA he thinks It's the worst since Hitler's regime, and it's a real threat to our society, and it's being reflected in football. I think football is leading by example in the fight against the rise of white supremacists, but I do believe that England can't look to the East when we're not suggesting or threatening stadium bans.
And Simon, what would make a club owner sit up and take notice?
That's assuming that club owners don't do that already. I think there's a zero tolerance policy. I think we're talking about ignorance, which is a societal issue and not a sport issue. I think you can go across the pantheon of sport. You can talk about people's attitudes. It's not English football's responsibility to look at what happens in the Eastern Bloc countries. It's not English cricket's responsibility to look at the homophobic attitude of West Indian cricketers that were making observations about the way Joe Root batted and referred to it as being gay or whatever the slur they thought they were putting towards him. I have a challenge about it because I look at it and say the game itself is, in my view, not racist. Myself and Chris have had many conversations in the past about the proliferation or the penetration of black and minority ethnic managers into the game and why that manifests itself, and we have differing views on that. And as a person that owned a football club in a multi-ethnic environment, I would have employed a back manager if one had applied for the job, and I fired managers regularly, and there was a regular turnstile of opportunities, and I never had one from that community.
Great phrase, turnstile of opportunity.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's why.
Possibly. I always gave managers enough rope, either to run with or hang themselves with, depending upon their point of view. But I look at the idea that you can eliminate ignorance. It is a societal issue. It is not a football issue. And I think football clubs have always adopted a zero tolerance policy and tried to ensure that fans behave themselves. The consequence of it, and Carrie's probably right, is if the fans of a football club, and as a football club owner, you can only be responsible for a certain amount of their behaviour. I remember us playing, completely different off topic, but playing Sunderland in a playoff semi-final of 2004 and winning, and watching my fans run onto the pitch, our fans, and torment the Sunderland fans. And I went on the pitch a la sort of Brian Clough style and got them off because I didn't want it. But that's not my responsibility. I can't be responsible for the individual actions of people that want to behave in a certain way. Some people just want to see the world burn, Jerry. But as far as consequencing it, I would suspect football has this sort of immature attitude of consequencing people through financial gain, financial penalties. If you breach financial fair play, which is about finances, you get fucking well fined, which is, to my mind, is hypocritical. But the idea of stadium bans and making clubs understand that actually,
And the fans, crucially.
well, the season ticket
won't
holders will have games being taken away from them because of people sitting next to them or around them that are behaving in an unacceptable fashion. It's draconian, but sometimes if you want to stop people from behaving in a certain way, if you want dissent out of the game with players, you do what it takes. If you want people to stand 10 yards away from the ball, you introduce a can that sprays it in front of people so they know what they're doing. And if you want this sort of stuff out of the game, you've got to mean what you say and say what you mean. And this might be what Carrie was saying, may well be the solution. Start taking English Premier League clubs and saying if there is repeated instances of significant examples of racist or homophobic or any ism inside a stadium, the consequence is you play in front of empty seats.
Good. Well, change of pace here. Question. Mike Ashley, Stan Kroenke, I think you could add a few more, maybe the Glazers. Club owners or business owners? Who wants to start? Chris, you worked on the...
Oh, no, I think that's got to be Simon's one.
Simon?
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of both, aren't they?
Cool.
I mean, let's look at it. Whatever Newcastle fans think, and you've worked for him, haven't you? With Mike Ashley, he's £350 million deep in that football club, whether they like it or they don't like it. And football clubs are now businesses. I know when I walked through the door in 2000 and I started saying football clubs are businesses, everyone said there's an ugly thing to say about a football club. It belongs to the community. It's not a business. When you're paying players £100,000 or £200,000 a week, it becomes a business. Now, the businesses that prosper are the ones that reinvest in themselves. And if you look at Arsenal, that need to evolve. They're a balance sheet football club. They're an arm's length subsidiary of American businesses that Stan Kroenke's got more interest in. And that is why Arsenal are beginning to erode and there's a distance beginning to come from them and the clubs that will be and have been and continue to be. But what do you want from football? Do you want it all to be about money? Do you want it to lose every aspect of what it means to us? Does it have to be owned by every single Middle Eastern individual or American? Do we not have any value in what we want anymore? Is everything about money? But on the flip side of that, we are now at a situation where you can't unring a bell. So if you ask me the question, do I think they're businessmen? I think at the centre of a football club is the desire to be successful on the pitch. There's nothing wrong with having a healthy business ethic behind it, as long as you continue to perpetuate which is at the centre of a football club, which is aspiration. Because football fans are emotive. No other business in the world do you get to serve up crap one week and people come back and watch it again the following week. So football is very unique in that fashion.
Have you got any club in mind there?
Well, a variety of them.
Henry, you got a view on this?
Well, yeah, owners. I mean, it's a constant issue. I mean, you take Newcastle United, I simply don't understand Mike Ashley's game plan, his strategy there, because he is a businessman. He goes into the high street, I think he's just bought Jack Wills today, and he takes distressed assets and then tries to rebuild them. At Newcastle United, he's almost done the reverse. He has taken a club at the heart of the community, which I take your point about they should be businesses and not community, but actually, if you're clever, and he's a clever man, no, but just let me finish it. If you can actually combine the two, and Newcastle United fans would probably spend more in the mega store, would probably spend more in the, getting coffees or whatever around the ground, if they were treated with a little bit more respect from the owners. And I do have this concern with owners, is that they are becoming increasingly detached. And I don't understand that from a business point of view. If you look at Arsenal, I cover a lot of Arsenal, Arsenal would be a far happier place if Stan Kroenke actually showed a little bit more respect to the supporters, actually turned up to meetings. Okay, his son Josh is a little bit more open-minded and has been actually talking to the fans. But why alienate Arsenal fans? I mean, in any other business, you wouldn't alienate your clientele, whoever, customers, whatever you want to call them. So I just don't understand why he's doing that, whether it's personal, whether he actually really wants to sell them. I mean, there was a game last season and the second half was slightly delayed, and one of the local journalists thought, just to fill the time, he would count up how many mentions that you could see of Sports Direct, and they're about 160. So would he then want to sell? But I just don't understand why alienate fans. We see it time and again with ticket prices, moving games. I know that's a sort of slight broadcaster's issue. There's so many issues that
nobody goes in, Henry. No owner in their right mind goes in there thinking like, gee, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I alienate myself from the get-go. What you walk through the door with is an attitude.
But Mike Ashley has done that, though. Stan Kroenke.
Well, you say that, but there's a propensity. I live next door to John Hall, and John Hall couldn't be more dyed-in-the-wool Newcastle, yet he got a shed load of abuse from Newcastle fans because he didn't do what certain segments of the fans want you to do. I'm not excusing bad owners. I'm not giving Roland de Châtelet a pass, or the guys at Orient a pass, or whoever else at Bury or Bolton that's responsible for the messes that those football clubs are in, or the mistakes that I made that resulted in me losing a football club. But I'm looking at it and saying it is a very difficult job. You were talking last night about the guys skipping across the threshold of buying Port Vale and how wonderful they are. Go look at those guys in 2 years' time and see how they feel about the industry that they once loved looking at from the outside, and then realise that it's a thankless task because you can't win. You could, but sometimes for certain segments of the fans, you could build the best stadium, sign Lionel Messi, give them a season ticket for free every single year, and you'd still be a wanker.
But the couple you're talking about who've just gone into Port Vale, the Shanahans, they understand. Look, these are serious business people who have built up a sort of multi-million-pound company in IT in 30 years. So they understand that, but they also understand that football's a community asset.
We all do, Henry, believe me. We all do.
On to a more football-based topic, perhaps, player-based. Who do we think is the most underrated player in the Premier League? So, Chris, you had a few that probably didn't get the recognition, someone like Lewis Dunk or some of those lads. Is there anyone you'd look at now as the season is about to start, doesn't get the credit that they deserve?
Well, I think probably, as we are here today, and my latest club, of course, was Brighton, then it gives me a decent opportunity to speak about maybe sort of one or two of the players there. And And one of the subjects, the most recent subjects, has been defensive players, and particularly we spoke about defensive players at Arsenal, of course Manchester United bringing in Maguire, and I think when you have defensive players at a club that are regarded as having had really good seasons, and I'm speaking about Duffy and Dunk now, two centre halves that I had, and for 2 seasons in the Premier League, Duffy's had an excellent season. The season just gone, perhaps scoring more goals, but the two of them as a partnership have really excelled, I think, in the 2 seasons. And I think when you are a defender that's able to excel in a team where you know you're going to be doing more defending than a top 6 team and a middle of the table team, it means that these 2 players have meant an awful lot to that club and to that team. And probably, if I look at the last 2 seasons, in whether anybody or myself would look at it as success, staying in the division first season and of course second season, then a fair percentage of that would have been down to the partnership that they had, what they meant to the team, the consistency. 2 centre halves that are old-fashioned centre halves will throw their bodies in front of the ball, stop a goal. And for me, 2 centre halves at a time when Maguire, of course, is going for 80 million, who I think is an outstanding player, and there are been clubs mentioned that could do with having stronger defenders, centre halves, and so. And I think it's right that for me, sitting here, is to give them 2 recognition. So I would say 2 centre halves at Brighton, Shane Duffy and Lewis Dunk.
Ted, is it fair to say that players at less fashionable clubs have got less chance of getting called up for international sides? You see it all the time. They get moved to a top 4 or 5 club and then they get called up, don't they?
Yeah, a little bit. I was thinking about the question that what Chris was answering. It's a bit harsh to say about underrated players, because if they're playing in the Premier League, they've got to be rated at somewhere along the line. But I was thinking about who I could say, and probably there'd be people in here say, no, he's not underrated. But someone like Mark Noble at West Ham. Yeah. He must have, I don't know, he's been playing there 10, 15 years, is he? 15 years
Easily
now?
15, yeah.
With probably, let's say, 7, 8, 9 managers. And I think every manager's probably gone in there and gone, yeah, Mark Noble, can't run, not the biggest, not the strongest, doesn't really do a lot to the naked eye. Leave him out, we'll put someone else in there. And it's like, yeah, but why is our team not functioning? Put Mark Noble back in there and he makes everybody else play, and he's in the right position. He's not the quickest, but he gets there, plays the right ball at the right time, knows when to hit someone with a challenge, does all the right things at the right time on the football pitch. And they're the sort of players that get underrated, a little bit overlooked. He's not nutmegging someone and hitting the ball 70 yards onto someone's toe so that they can score a goal. He's very efficient, a bit like Chris's 2 centre-halves that are always there, always do the right thing. And that might be called underrated, but the managers get to realise after a while that what a player he is, by the way. We need him in the team because he makes our team tick.
Just moving along, we've got a question here, which is how will Frank Lampard get on in his first year at Chelsea, if he gets a first year? Carrie, do you want to start that one?
If he gets a first year. Yeah, that was my... I was there at his opening press conference, and there was a whole row of reserved seats. And I was expecting this to be a whole row of support. And Marina Granovskaya, Petr Cech, of course, he's worked with for many years, they have a great relationship. And Bruce Buck came out and he sat down and I said, have you been given any assurances that you don't have to finish top 4, that you'll get a bonus for that? And he went, no, I wouldn't ask for it. And I think that's a moment lost. That was a real moment to get behind a manager who's going to show faith in youth. That move, my apprehension about what would happen with Frank Lampard was measured at that point. I would have liked him to have that reassurance of, you go as far as you can, this is an opportunity, it's a storm we didn't want to brew up, but in a sense it's a perfect storm. They've got to buy into this academy. They've got some fantastic youth, and in him and his assistant coaches and his team, what knowledge they have. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I just think it's a bit of a shame that the board haven't said to him, this season, do what you want. Next season we expect top 4. But I do believe he's got the knowledge. I believe he's got the work ethic to be absolutely the influences we've already seen. He's ready to make tough decisions and get rid of players like he has with Drinkwaters, putting him out already up for sale or out on loan. I think he will be shrewd, and also what he does under pressure. I think he's done so well in his first season, certainly at Derby. But I think the greatest character, we all know Frank Lampard is this record goal scorer, but I think I saw the true character of Frank when he would, believe it or not, go through goal scoring droughts. And there was a huge amount of pressure on him, and he wanted to score much more than anyone else wanted to see him score. And the way he handled himself, the way he still encouraged, the way he still motivated his teams under extreme pressure. I think the knowledge that he's got of those players, one of the most exciting players I'm looking to see is Mason Mount this season, because I think he's already doing really well. And I think what he'll do with youth and the way he'll place that team and the confidence in the systems, already 2 different systems, which is one up from Sarri Ball, I think he'll do really well.
Jerry, he's also got the fans.
Yeah,
the fans are really influential there. You saw the stick that Sarri got last season. You saw the stick that Rafa Benitez got. He got them to, well, 2 managers who got them to Europa League finals, and they were being slaughtered by the fans all the way there because of quality of football, or, you know, supposed quotes from Benitez in the past. They'll be very loyal. I cannot see the fans turning, even if, because they love Lampard, because one of their greatest players, the sort of, you know, the magical moments that he gave them, they'll be pretty supportive. You also got an owner who's not often in the country, certainly not often at matches. He'll be slightly hands off at the moment because he's got other issues. So I think Frank Lampard will have a fine season.
Chris, you know what it takes to be a manager in the Premier League. He's just had 1 year in the Championship. Does that prepare him well enough for a big challenge like Chelsea?
Well, the honest answer is you don't know, you know, because what we are talking about, we're talking about the character of the individual, what we know of him, his personality, how he's dealt with his first season, what he means to Chelsea, what he means to the Chelsea supporters. So, you know, these are the things that we do know. These are the obvious ones. Great career that he's had. Very level-headed individual. But it's going to be the balance between, I think, what the supporters will allow. I think there will be a good feel about the possibility of some younger players playing, even though, you know, arguably his best 2 young players, I think, will be out for the first, whatever it is, 3-4 months of the season. But I think there will generally be a good feel from the supporters of seeing some of the younger players given an opportunity, being involved in the squad. They've of course lost their best player. Sometimes when you lose your best player, you know, other players will step up to the mark, and that will be Frank's responsibility to put all of that together. But I also generally feel that because of the feel, because it's him, that he will be, or they will accept more. I think if there's a difficult start, but the performances are decent and they quite like what they see and what he's trying, I think Frank will get that leeway. But it's that balance between you know, what the expectations are, and I actually think that at the start of the season, I think the expectations of the supporters will be lesser than I think it would have been last season and the season before, because they appreciate it's a bit of a transition. Frank's coming back, so I think.
Do you not think that's going to change, though, Chris?
Yes, it will change.
Chelsea are Chelsea,
Yeah,
and they expect.
I
think it's a real tough job he's got.
I think it's a tough job.
As a first-time manager going in there, not first time, first Premier League management job. He's had 1 season. Can't buy his own players, can't get his players on side by saying, I want you, bringing them in. I think the expectancy levels with the Chelsea fans, because they expect to win things. They've shown that in the last 2 or 3 years with the managers that have been in there. And if he goes 6-8 games without a win at the start of the season, he'll be under pressure. There's no, Frank, scored so many goals, let's give him a bit more time. It's like, we need to sort this out. That'll be coming from the supporters, that'll be coming from the top as well, and it'll be like, right, what are we going to do? And the pressure will be on. I think I wish him well, but I think it's a real tough job.
But I think that's sorry, just the last. I think that's normal, and I would expect that as well. But I still think with everything that we've spoken about, and ultimately there will be one man that demands the most, and
That's the problem.
and demanding the most is because what Champions League means to the club.
I think Henry was
but I think he'll be given more time. I really do.
I think Henry's the narrative that Henry's alluding to is that obviously there's a raft of reasons why Frank Lampard will be given empathy from the Chelsea fans. One of them because he's super frank. I looked at the idea of Frank Lampard taking that job after 1 year experience in Derby, which does not prepare him for a Premier League job of the stature of Chelsea, despite his experiences as a player. And I thought if Frank Lampard thought that was a good opportunity, he should sleep on it. And if he woke up in the morning and still thought it was a good idea, he should go back to bed, because I think the challenges there are very real. I think that, the idea that Bruce Buck is a heavyweight influence in Chelsea. He's running around trying to appoint the Premier League chief executive to replace Richard Scudamore. The big six are trying to break away from this division. They're trying to grab European rights. This is not a game for Chelsea in terms of the idea that they can afford to drop outside the top six because there's some romantic notion that Frank Lampard's going to come back and given a passage of time to achieve. Chelsea have to continue being in touch and around the top four in this division. So I think Frank Lampard has got a very challenging task. The flip side of that, of course, if there ever was a job for him to take this job, it might be now, because he's got a ready-made set of excuses, which are he can't buy players. Chelsea's owner is apparently in flux because he can't get in the country for a visa, even though Buck is running the operation on a daily basis. So I think there's a backdrop, but I'm with Teddy. I think that this will, if Chelsea don't start on a front foot and don't start with a style of play that fans are becoming acclimatised to now, and what they think is a style of play, and what they're being shown by the Liverpools and Man Cities of the world, and every one of you poor buggers that have got teams that don't reach up to that standard get pressure from fans. I think Frank Lampard will come under the same pressure as every other one of you guys comes under.
But I think exactly that. We could say the same with Ollie at Manchester United. We could say the same at Emery at Arsenal. So I don't think Frank's gone into the job thinking that it's going to be comfortable, it's going to be an easy job. He will know how difficult this job is, and if he that change from being the top class player that he was to going into management at Derby, and what that meant, the change, the sleepless nights, the big decisions. Well, you can multiply that by 2, 3,
Does
4.
it annoy you, Chris, though, you experienced managers, watching these newbies coming up, not earned their stripes, walk into these big jobs?
No, actually, it doesn't.
Yeah, but you're too nice a man to be upset by that.
No, it doesn't, because this is the game. We can speak about opportunities, some getting opportunities quicker than others, and so on. And this is the part of the game that we all debate. And ultimately, it's about one thing. It's about trying to do the best you can and trying to be as successful as you can. And at this present moment, we've got more first-time managers, not getting a second job than at any other stage. So it's a hard enough profession.
And Ted, we touched on Ollie, but he obviously had a fantastic start, didn't he, in his first 12 games, and then it dipped once he got the job. Ironically, is he in a similar situation? Because the pressure there is as big as it gets.
Without a doubt, he's managing one of the biggest clubs in the world, top 3 clubs in the world. I think when he took over, he had some fantastic results, but I think the results papered over the cracks that were there. I mean, there was a few results that they won games where it didn't really deserve to, but got results. And, it was just by the end of the 3 months that was there, it was like he's got to have the job. And because everyone loves Ollie anyway up there, he had to have the job. But, the cracks were papered over, and then the real light came to the fore. And it just shows what a big job he's got on his hands. There's unrest in the camp with the players as well, which is probably his biggest factor that he's got to sort out. Been asked a lot today about Pogba Should he be staying or should he be going? Don't think you need that as a young manager. You don't need those issues. You need everybody pulling in the same direction, everybody behind you. No one sniping around the back to putting other people off. You need everybody on the right side. So for me, I think he should have got as much money as he could, and bring someone else in who you know is going to be fighting for the cause, because that's just an added pressure that you don't need as a big time manager.
Well, going on from that, we've got a question here. Thoughts on Rooney for Derby? What's in it for Wayne and what's in it for Derby County? Gary? He won't arrive till January.
No.
He'll be player coach, so he's not going in as manager as such, but clearly his ambitions are in that direction.
I think it puts Derby back in the conversation again. I think we've been talking about that. I think Morris won't mind being back on radio shows talking about big signings and having that exposure. I think Wayne Rooney is an incredible influence in the dressing room. I think he has great potential to be a future coach. One recent example of that is Jadon Sancho in his first start for England. It was not his debut, but his first start. He had his debut in Croatia. And he was in the dressing room, and this is a very confident, cocky player. And he came out afterwards having set up a beautiful assist for Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was just pretty much the highlight of the show against the USA in what was Wayne Rooney's testimonial. He was so confident, and came and I was like, that was easy then. He was like, oh no, it wasn't. And he said, I was in the dressing room and I was a bag of nerves, and Wayne Rooney came up to me and went, you all right, chap? And he was like, oh, going out of Wembley. He said, you have nothing to lose. And he pretty much said, I want to thank Wayne Rooney for that performance. He didn't ask for that advice, and Wayne Rooney picked him out, but the influence, you'll talk about this, and you followed him right from the early beginnings that he's had on those England dressing rooms, not always positive. And I think his private life and the media circus that runs around him can't follow into his coaching career. That's got to be put behind him seriously if he's going to be taken seriously. But I think what the influence that he can have on players, we saw that with Ashley Cole going and having an influence as well behind the scenes in the dressing room. I think those players can go into a dressing room and really influence young players. I think he could be a great coach, but he has to draw a line on the media circus around him.
I mean, the FA have spent, 125 million on St George's Park, which is basically a coaching academy developing young coaches. And I think it's good. You turn on, it's a golden era for broadcast at the moment. If you look at the quality of punditry on radio, on television, it is fantastic. But I do like seeing players who you've watched growing up, playing, and then stepping into management. I mean, Teddy did it. I don't know if you want to go back into it again, but I think your generation, I think it's brilliant seeing, Gerrard at Rangers, Lampard Derby now Chelsea, Scott Parker. That's a difficult job, but it's great to, Sol Campbell. It's just great to see a new generation coming through. Maybe they're being accelerated too quickly. I don't know, but just talking to some of them, they've got that desire. Wayne Rooney's always talked for a long time about doing his coaching badges, and I think the perception of Wayne Rooney is often set with respect to television, but by how he talks in 30 seconds, 3 quick questions after a game, when his mind scrambled. He might have lost, he might have won, there might be euphoria, there might be pain, he might be having to sort of rush off to see his family, sponsors, whatever. But actually, if you sit down and talk to him, he's always eloquent. I mean, when he first came in, there was all this fuss about, when he first came into the England squad and about overexposure of a 17-year-old. He sat down with about 6 or 7 journalists. There were more minders there from the FA than journalists, and he was terrific. He's far brighter than people give him credit for. There's a slightly sort of patronising perception of Rooney, and I wish him well. I mean, I agree with what Simon was saying last night. The sort of balance of how big is he going to be in the dressing room, and Philip Cocu, is that going to be an issue for him? But I think it's exciting. I mean, the narrative of the season, we've got so many great subplots, and to have Wayne Rooney parachuted in January, the FA Cup draw comes round, and it's Derby County going to Old Trafford. There's just going to be so many wonderful elements there, and I think everyone will wish him well.
Good. Right, well, time's pushing on. We'll have a couple of quick-fire ones. Teddy, who was your favourite strike partner?
Got 2. Shearer for England. He was the best over a 7-year period, 8-year period. And Klinsmann for my club football. Absolute legend of a player. Just won the World Cup when he came to join us at Tottenham, and was just unbelievable. enthusiasm oozing from every pore. Felt like he was an 18-year-old on trial, the way he ran about all over the training ground, and gave him half a chance. He would hit the target more often than not score. Unbelievable.
And I remember when he joined at the time, the thing he found most interesting, let's say, was the post-match celebrations going out to was it the race course up at on the North Circular?
Yeah, go on.
Go to the Dogs, wasn't it?
Go on, we all know where you're talking about. Where you're talking about, Jerry. What's the name of it?
Chigwell. No, not Chigwell.
Charlie Chance.
Charlie Chance.
You know that? You know Charlie Chance?
You took him. You took him, didn't you?
Yeah, of course we took him. Yeah.
And he couldn't believe it, could he?
He loved him.
In Germany, it was different. In Italy, it was different.
Yeah.
You finish, you play, you go home. In England, you go out for a few beers with the lads.
Just a few.
It's not the same now, though.
That's how it works, Jerry, isn't it? That's how it works.
Chris, quick fire one. Who was the best manager to be on the touchline with? Who do you enjoy their presence?
Are we talking about against or...
Yeah, opposition manager.
Opposition. I think probably the one, and I'll go back to, obviously I've had half of my managerial career at Premier League level, and then of course at Championship level also. But Carlos Carvalho at Sheffield Wednesday. I think there's always an age-old tradition here that you see the manager after the game, will have a glass of wine or so, and probably that's what that's changed over recent years, and I think it's just it's a cultural thing. A lot of the foreign managers, they're not used to doing it, and sometimes you'll see some of the foreign games where the manager will finish the game and they'll both go down the tunnels without shaking hands or so. So traditionally, it's always been different here. You'll see him before the game, quick conversation, shake hands afterwards, and you'll see him for a drink afterwards, discuss the game and so. So that's slowly but surely changing, and it doesn't happen so much. But always had great conversations, won or lost with Carlos Carvalho, and one that would stay in for a long time. Talk about the game, talk about how they train, the different methods and so on. And I think he was just one that really embraced the traditions here. Premier League, particularly against the top managers, always good. But it's always good because they're always in a good mood. Yeah. After
just won the league, didn't they?
And the top managers are all bad losers, and that comes with the territory, because they are such dogged individuals, they are such winners, and they are used to winning, and again that comes with the territory.
Simon, quick one for you. If you could change, introduce, or scrap one rule, what would it be?
That's a difficult one. If I would change, introduce, or scrap one rule, I don't think there's too many rules that particularly trouble me. Within the confines of the game, I think that ultimately, if I'm looking at it from a business point of view, I would look at the idea that financial fair play is a toothless tiger that isn't being operated in any sort of real efficient way. I mean, I wasn't really interested in rules, Jerry. I didn't spend my time in boardrooms. I didn't fraternise with most of the other chairmen. I insulted most of them every available opportunity I could. So the rules that people like Doug Ellis were people that I really spent a lot of time admiring, because they were in their own way, looking at the world their own way, and I liked that. But I suppose from a commercial standpoint, I would look at the advent of financial fair play and the way that football is being structured now and say, if we're going to do this, let's make sure we do it properly and make sure that it's implemented so teams like Man City can't obviate it, and people are able to save themselves from themselves outside of the Premier League. Because let's be clear, football doesn't just stop at the Premier League. There are 72 clubs outside of the Premier League, of which the Premier League takes 3 from each season, hands 3 down. 800,000 fans on any given Saturday watch football, and 450,000 of them are outside of the Premier League. So whilst we all lose our minds about where the Premier League is, there is also a pyramid that equally is important.
Now, I think, Dave, you've got some questions. Have you got them online, or are you going to go around the floor?
I've got some questions from social. Firstly, it's just broken during our time here that Tottenham's agreed a £64.4 million fee for Dybala.
That was right.
Teddy,
You heard it here first.
Yep. Teddy, what's your views on that? What do you think where does that place Tottenham going forward into this season?
That's come out of the blue, isn't it?
Yep.
Has it?
About lost.
Absolutely, yep.
He was talking about going to Man United, yeah?
Absolutely.
And he's just, wow, that's fantastic news for Tottenham. That's another top player coming to North London and the right side of it. So.
He put him out of the Champions League 2 years ago, didn't he?
Yeah, but top player. So the more top players coming to Tottenham, love it.
But do you think that means Eriksen goes?
Probably. The talk was about Coutinho as well coming. That probably quashes that one as well. He'll probably be going somewhere else. I don't know for definite. Maybe he'll get Coutinho as well, but there's talk about Eriksen going. I was asked that earlier. I'm not sure that's such a positive move for Eriksen at the moment. When you look at the two clubs and where they're heading in general, Tottenham are on the up big time. Manchester United have got a lot of problems. I don't think that's a great move for Eriksen if he thinks he's getting a step up at the moment. Even though Manchester United is a massive club, it's still a move at this current climate, a tough one. But it could happen now, couldn't it? Could happen with him coming in, yeah. But great news for Tottenham.
Absolutely. This one's for Chris. It says, it's about money in football. It says, if your next club gave you 500 million to spend, do you think you could win the Premier League?
No. No, because if I look at the two teams that we've spoke about for a lot of the evening and who everybody thinks either one's going to win the Premier League, what you have in Liverpool and Man City are teams that have been put together over a period of time, and what they've had is that consistency. We spoke about Man City, of course, brought in a central midfield player. Liverpool haven't really, I thought, brought anybody in that I think that's going to walk straight into that first team. They haven't had to because they've had that consistency over these last few years. So the thought of having that type of money is very appealing, and it can bring you a lot of headaches, but it can also bring you, of course, a lot of quality. But it's not just about picking players, putting them into a team. It's about that stability. And sometimes, if I look at, we of course spoke about the player or the areas that Liverpool needed, last year, and they spoke about goalkeeper and they spoke about centre half, and probably them two players made the difference to get them to the level that they wanted to be. So yes, lovely to have that type of money, but it's not just about putting a load of players together. It's about getting the right timings and that consistency. And sometimes you're better off 2 or 3 players as opposed to more players than that.
Absolutely. And the final question here, talking about the quality of players in the Premier League, is Pogba the most overrated player in the Premier League? Oh, sorry, it's not even that. Is Pogba the most overrated player in football? And that's to the whole panel.
Who wants that?
No, I mean, no. I mean, he's won the World Cup. He's won trophies in Italy. You saw that footage of him, how he inspired the French team in the dressing room before the World Cup final. There's a fabulous footballer in there. Maybe it's agent, maybe it's one or two things around him, maybe he's distracted, maybe he doesn't feel that Manchester United are going to fulfil his potential. They're not in the Champions League at the moment. But you can't sort of disrespect the stunning CV that he's got.
Anyone else?
True. Yeah, exactly. He's a World Cup winner. You've got to take your hat off to that. There's not many of them about. But at the same time, I think at the moment, it takes a little bit more than a bit of flair at Manchester United to excite the crowd. I think they need a character or the desire of the players that are already there to change the mentality of everybody and And the fighting spirit needs to come out. They need to work through this period and come out on top. And I don't think Pogba's demeanour excites the Old Trafford crowd. And I think that's where the problem lies. If he digs deep and shows his character, then his true colours and how good a footballer he is will come out on top.
Depends what prism you look at him through. If you're looking at him through a £90 million footballer, then it's overrated. If you want to take the mythology, yes, he's won a World Cup medal. And if you look at that and it's in isolation, you say that's fantastic. But the myth that the press like to perpetuate is that Pogba was instrumental in winning the World Cup. Griezmann was instrumental in it, Mbappe was instrumental in it, and then Kante was instrumental in it. Pogba, what he is normally is, which was noise, jingoistic rubbish. And what he's done at Manchester United makes him an overrated player. And perhaps someone who knows a lot about football, Alex Ferguson, got it right first time round.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if I can just add to that.
Yeah, please, Chris. Please.
You're going to pile into it.
No, the question was as a player, and for me there is absolutely no doubt. And we spoke about Sahar earlier on, and so and these are wonderful footballers, as is Pogba. And in the period of time where probably Solskjaer secured the managerial role at Manchester on a permanent basis, arguably Pogba was his best player in that period of time and the most influential player at that period of time. So for me, and I know there's everything around it and some of the things that Teddy has said, that's more football player environment, where it will end up, and so. But as a pure footballer, and when you have a pure footballer like that, then it's about starting again. So what will happen is that everything we've spoke about him will be judged again. And if Pogba starts the season well, Manchester United start the season well, we'll all be speaking about Pogba's got his right head on, the manager's done a great job, he's now settled into the Manchester United role, and all of them things. But purely as a footballer, I think he's a wonderful footballer, and for me, certainly not overrated.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a stack of questions. We could go on all night, but unfortunately time has caught up with us. We've run over anyway, but I think I've certainly learnt a lot tonight and had a lot of fun here. I hope you've enjoyed it as well, and perhaps you can give your appreciation to our fantastic panel.